transfer of power, right? Of having a transition that worked for the American people and had the American people at the forefront in trying to make sure that we got this done.
I guess we've heard variations of that answer through the briefing, but I guess more plainly, I'm wondering, if you'll just say your view, which seems to be that Trump gets no credit.
I've shared my view. I don't have anything else to share. I've shared how we got to this point. The president shared that moments ago. He laid out in very succinct way on how we got to this point. I've talked about Brett McGurk, who's on the ground talking to negotiators, has been there working at the direction of this president, the leadership, obviously, of the National Security Advisor. This has been something that has been in the works for months, way before November. That is just how this has worked. I'm not here to talk about the transition. I'm not here to talk about who gets credit, not get credit. I'm here to talk about what this president has been able to do. And here's what is also incredibly important here. We're going to get hostages who are going to go home to their family. After 15 months of, I don't even want to think the horror that they have gone through. I can't even imagine it. And I think that matters. I mean, we're going back and forth about credit, but people are going to go home to their families. And that is so important. And hopefully the phases will continue and we'll get to an end of war here. And that is important. And let's not forget, increase that humanitarian aid into Gaza because there are people there who need that aid and the assistance. I'm going to move on. Go ahead. I'm going to wait.
How will you grade yourself on your goal of being the most transparent administration?
Go ahead. I've taken like 3 questions. I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
No answer there?
Oh, go ahead. I've already taken 3 of your questions. I'm going to make sure some of your colleagues get an opportunity as well.
Could you respond to the report released by the special counsel who prosecuted Hunter Biden? Specifically, he talked about Biden's claims that his son was unfairly targeted and said the president's characterizations are incorrect based on the facts in this case, and on a more fundamental level, they are wrong. He also said that politicians who attack the decisions of career prosecutors as politically motivated when they disagree with the outcome of a case undermine the public's confidence in our criminal justice system.
So, a couple things there. Let's not forget why the president came to his conclusion, how he got to this point of pardoning his son. And he talked about the circumstances of this prosecution and how out of norm they were. And let's not forget there were legal experts that agreed with this president, who shared that conclusion of this president. And one of those experts is a former prosecutor, as you all know, Attorney General Eric Holder, and he was very clear. I just want to quote him. No U.S. attorney would have charged this case given the underlying facts. Had his name been Joe Smith, the resolution would have been fundamentally and more fairly a declination. Pardon warranted. And if you look at what happened here, and you look at paying your taxes, the vast majority of people who don't pay their taxes on time are not charged with criminal penalties. They're just not. They pay their penalties and fees, and that's what Hunter Biden did. And so the president wasn't alone in this, in making that. When he made that determination, he had legal experts who also agreed with how he, making this decision on pardoning his son, Hunter Biden.
No concern that he undermines the public perception of the justice system.
I just answered that question. I don't have anything else for you. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, great. Thanks. I know that you said you don't have details on what the president will be doing on Sunday, but can you expound on why he chose to spend his last day in office in South Carolina?
We'll have more to share. I don't want to get ahead of that. We'll have more to share. And why South Carolina?
Last thing.
Yeah.
Has the president spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, or does he plan to do so in the coming days?
Well, as you know, he recently just spoke to the Prime Minister, and if we have more calls to read out, we certainly will do that. I know I have to start wrapping up. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Karine. On Monday, President Biden said he was more optimistic than ever about the future. Isn't he afraid or concerned that part of his legacy could be or is about to be erased by the incoming president?
I mean, look, when I answered this question about, I think it was a polling question from Kayla. I also talked about, in my answering that question, how popular some of the things that the president has done. CHIPS and Science Act, bipartisan infrastructure legislation, the PACT Act, and even the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. And I talked about the insulin being the insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Those are things, all of those things that I just laid out are popular with the American people. And that is something that the incoming administration has to think about, Republicans on the other side of Pennsylvania has to think about. These are things that are incredibly popular. Some of them, bipartisan infrastructure legislation, CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT Act, were done in a bipartisan way. And so to undo those successes, some of the things, again, popular with the American people, that's something that they have to seriously think about. And what we have done in those historic pieces of legislation that obviously is now law will have lasting effects on people's lives, lasting effect. So he's very confident about that.
And one about foreign policy, because President Biden said his presidency restored the U.S. credibility in the world. Jen Psaki actually said that in her first briefing here, that he was going to do this. But when we talk to foreign leaders or diplomats around, many say that the inconsistency of the U.S. foreign policy is making it harder to work together and really trust that U.S. can be a reliable ally.
Say that
so
last
what do
part
you
again?
tell
The
them?
inconsistency, you said?
Yeah, of the U.S. foreign policy. Make it hard to work and trust that U.S. can be a reliable ally. So what message do you...
why are they saying that? What's the inconsistency?
Well, one administration come and do a lot of Cuba and Paris and all, and then you put it back, and now again it's about to be...
I mean, look, I'm not going to get into what the next administration is going to do, not going to do. What I can talk about is what the president wanted to make sure and that he got done in his 4 years here, which is restore the reputation of the United States, which he was able to do. Get things done on behalf of the American people and make sure that we really mended our relationships with our partners and allies. And that's what you were able to do. You don't expand NATO if it wasn't for this president and his relationships and his experience, right? You don't support Ukraine the way that it was supported by more than 50 countries, the way that it was able to get what it needed to really be on the ground. Remember, Kyiv was supposed to fall within days. That didn't happen. That didn't happen because of this president's leadership. I'm not going to get into what the next president's going to do or not do. And let's not forget today. Today was a big day in the foreign policy space to get this hostage deal done. Hostages are going to go home. We're going to be able to get humanitarian aid surged into Gaza. And we're hopefully going to end this war. And that is incredibly important. All right, guys, I have to go. Thank you. Yep.
Have you been in touch with Caroline yet?
I was just asked this question. I was just asked this question. I have not been in touch with her, but I certainly wish her luck. Thanks, everybody.
Why have you not been in touch with her?
Come talk to me in the back.